नमस्कार एंड वेलकम टू आवर प्रोग्राम। पाश की पंक्ति है, सबसे ख़तरनाक होता है सपनों का मर जाना। लेकिन हमारे देश में ऐसे बहुत से बच्चे और बच्चियां हैं जिन्होंने कभी सपने देखे ही नहीं, उन्हें ये पता ही नहीं होता है कि उनके सपने क्या हैं। हमारी आज की मेहमान एक ऐसी शख्सियत हैं जो बच्चों और बच्चियों को उनके सपनों से परिचित करवाती हैं। We are delighted to have on our program today the educationist and very inspiring founder of Educate Girls, Safeena Husain. Welcome to the program, Safeena.
Thank you so much, Jasleen.
I especially decided to introduce you with this thing about dreams because that has been one of your experiences with one of the girls when you asked her, "बड़े होके क्या बनोगी?"
जी जी
वो क्या कहानी थी?
अब मुझे 10 साल हो गए बच्चियों के साथ काम करते करते, but really the things you encounter and one little girl once I asked her, I said, तुमको बड़े होके क्या बनना है? And she says, मुझे किसी ने कभी पूछा ही नहीं तो मैंने सोचा ही नहीं. And it was really like it was a revelation. It's like there was no aspiration because, she said there's nothing.
And that probably is the hardest thing because every child thinks of growing up to be someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that lack of aspiration that we see. So for example, आप लड़कियों से अगर पूछें ना कि खाने से पहले क्या करना चाहिए, हाथ धोना चाहिए, हमको कब नहाना चाहिए, रोज़ नहाना चाहिए, objective things, girls are able to answer. But if you ask rural girls, especially tribal girls, what makes you sad, what makes you happy, there is no answer because nobody has ever shown an interest in their feelings, which is very dangerous because A, it kills aspirations, but it also means that they are completely devoid of self-esteem.
Right.
Because they're not important.
Right.
They have become so valueless even in their own eyes that they're not expected to have any likes, dislikes.
And you've talked about how girls have names like Antim Bala.
जी, ये तो मतलब, we talk about mindsets and we talk about patriarchy, but sometimes just the symbols of that are so strong and so abhi, just last year, a few months ago, in Ajmer district, I was in one of the villages and वहाँ पे, we're just sitting with girls from the ages of around 12 to around 18. And just as an icebreaker, we said सबका introduction करते हैं, सब अपना नाम बताएंगे and things, simple things. उसमें एक लड़की उठी and I said, बेटा क्या नाम है? She says, मेरा नाम है नाराज नाथ.
अच्छा.
नाराज means angry. I said, बेटा नाराज क्यों रखा नाम? तो she said, जब मैं पैदा हुई तो घर में सभी इतना नाराज थे तो मेरी बेटी पैदा हुई है तो उसका नाम ही नाराज नाथ रख दिया. एक और बच्ची, उसका नाम, and I have come across this name many times, अंतिम बाला, क्योंकि आप चाहते थे कि भाई ये आखिरी लड़की हो जो घर में पैदा हो, कि इसके बाद लड़की ना पैदा हो, इसलिए आप उसका नाम ही अंतिम बाला.
तो ये बच्चियाँ वो हैं जिनके पास सपने तो खैर हैं ही नहीं, लेकिन नाम का भी बोझ है.
जी, नाम का बोझ है. मतलब सोसाइटी इज टेलिंग यू वेरी क्लियरली, वी वांटेड अ बॉय, यू वर नॉट वांटेड. और एक लड़की का नाम था आ चुकी, really to signify कि आ चुकी है ये, तो अब इसका क्या करना, अब तो ये आ चुकी, क्योंकि what you were waiting for and what you were really hoping for was the son. And so I think in some way or form every girl knows that she was unwanted, she wasn't the choice, she is what they are saddled with.
Yeah. I read somewhere about how when you went to Nainital with your father was asked this question about you being the only child and how the village women started crying.
Yes, so actually it was near Mussoorie, and I was doing a village health project.
Okay.
So my father said कि मैं आता हूँ तुम्हारी मदद करूँगा, क्लिनिक तुम कहाँ पहाड़ों में खुद करोगी, तो ऐसे चलिए. तो वो सब काम चल रहा था and we said हम छोटा सा एक walk लेते हैं and we decided to take a walk through the village and सबसे मतलब नमस्ते वमस्ते कर लेंगे, मिल लेंगे. So then people started to gather and then they started asking my father questions कि कितने बच्चे हैं, क्या करते हो? तो he said एक बेटी है, यही है. So the women really literally started crying, saying भगवान ने क्या तुमको श्राप दिया है, अभी भी समय है, दूसरी शादी कर लो. और मतलब कोशिश करो, मतलब we will pray for you. And they were beating their chests and crying that he did not have a male child. So he is very bindas. He just put his arms around me and he said, yahi mera beta hai, yahi meri beti hai. And we walked away. But I really felt, I said, what if I was a girl in that village and I'd been born there? Versus having a supportive father who said, you know, this is my son and this is my daughter. It was, I think, my first real awareness of privilege that we have.
And your father did encourage you so much against, of course, you've also been brought up in a very parochial kind of a setting like most of us do in North India. He encouraged you to go abroad to study.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting story because I got into a university in London and I was the first one, from my father's side, the first one in the family to have ever had the opportunity to go abroad and study. So on one hand, everybody was really happy, but then on the other hand, it costs money. And you know, even though I had like some scholarships and I had funding available, it still costs a lot of money. And I remember my father's best friend, and he was highly educated himself, IIT, IIMs, and you know, all of the rest of it. And he kind of looked over at my father, he said, Yusuf, are you sure? बेटी है, इतना पैसा खर्चा करेगा?
ये तो चली जाएगी.
No, मतलब फायदा क्या है? बेटी है. You know, he was almost making the case for my father, saying, do you really want to invest? Like, it would be better. I mean, it would be a no-brainer if it was a boy. But really, so even though I was the first, and it was a sense of pride, there was also this whole other piece saying, kya fayda?
So you really did luck out, didn't you?
I did really luck out. And my father basically walked out of there and he said, don't listen to that man. And he said, you know what? I just lost a friend today. And he just sort of put it down to that. Okay, I can't be friends with this man now.
But that is quite amazing to have a father who says that, because anybody else in that situation, and we are talking about India, not Bharat now, where they would probably agree with the friend and say, "Acha, theek hai, yahan Delhi mein ya India mein kahin padh lo." So do you think that is where the seeds were sown for this, or when you decided to go to LSE, you had other ideas? What did you want to do?
You know, it's really strange. I think even when I was at LSE, I didn't have a vision of a future. You know, I was like also one of the young people who didn't really know. But I had a very clear vision of what I wasn't going to be. I just didn't know what I was going to grow into. But I said, you know, I don't want to be like a globe-trotting salesperson. Like, I just knew that was not going to be the life for me. And then I went from LSE, I got an opportunity. I went to Silicon Valley and I did a job there. But that also in 9 months, I was like,
not me.
It's not me. So I started volunteering. And that's when I realized that I really, like, money is not important, or nothing is important as long as I feel like every day when I go to work, it's adding value or using your intellect or using things to solve social problems. And I think that's when I felt like, oh my God, this is what I really want to do.
So this also is interesting because, you know, this is how most kids are. They are not necessarily driven towards मैं बड़ा होके doctor बनना है और teacher बनना है. Most of us do try to just, you know, wade our way through whatever comes our way and then get pushed towards probably what we are meant to do, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also, like, I think I'm also talking about like late 80s, early 90s, when there wasn't so much, you know, we were, our entire schooling was about training us for middle management. If you became a CA or you became an engineer or a doctor, and that's where it kind of, you know, now I see youngsters have a little bit more exposure and thinking, you know, in terms of avenues that they want to get into.
Absolutely. So this was pretty radical, wasn't it? To go to LSE and then say, all right, I'm giving this up and I'm going to get involved. You got involved with child health.
Child family. So yes, so I was, and it's really funny, even the Silicon Valley job I had was hilarious because it was in 1995, it was a startup that was making a 3D web browser. Even today we don't have a 3D web browser. But it was like complete Nala land.
Yeah, but to be in Silicon Valley then was really the thing to do.
It was the thing to do. And 9 months I was like, oh my God, I can't stand this. And so I started volunteering for 2 organizations. And again, I didn't know anybody in America. I had no network. So I looked up the yellow pages. You know, we used to get those big directories.
Yeah.
So I just opened them up and looked for nonprofits with international in their name.
Okay.
So it was as unstrategic as that. Because I said development, I don't want to do development work like in Silicon Valley. There's nothing. So it was about, you know, looking at international work. So I ended up with Child Family Health International. I started as a volunteer and then they hired me. And then I ended up growing that organization from one program in Ecuador to 5 countries, 250 program partners. And so it was fabulous. I got
so
the
what was the
opportunity.
kind of stuff you were doing?
Yeah, so it was very similar to what I do now.
Okay.
It was really about working in rural and remote areas and bringing healthcare.
Okay.
And it's very, for a girl just, you know, straight out of Delhi and like not having any real exposure, I got to work in the Ecuadorian Amazon jungles, places where there are just 40 families, right? And then you walk another 2 days in the jungle and then you find another 40 families. Who's going to build you a hospital? Nobody. Who will even bring you a clinic? So it's very much how do you mobilize those own communities to help take ownership of their healthcare. So a lot of the things that I learned in my healthcare work with remote communities is what I eventually then brought to educate girls in terms of building the model.
One of them, of course, is self-help.
It's self-help. It's really about, you know, creating community agents of change from the same populations.
What brought you to India after traveling all over the world in South Africa and South America and all?
Yeah, so it was really great, I think, to be able to spend my entire 20s and things to work in South America and Africa and everywhere. But even when I had left, I always knew that this was a temporary thing. I never wanted to be settling down in America and becoming, you know, an immigrant in that sense. So for me, coming back to India was always what was on the horizon. It's just that I wanted exposure, I wanted to learn, to really be able to explore and then come back home.
So when you went through this experience of being in South America and Africa, did you finally feel that you were doing what you really wanted to do? Was this what you were meant for?
In terms of?
In terms of finding your calling, in a sense.
So I think I had found my calling in
because
terms of
Silicon Valley, of course.
Yeah, no. So the development sector was my calling. I really felt like this is where I belong. This is where I feel excited about getting up every day and going to work. So that way, I kind of felt like this is it. There is no other avenue for me. This is my sector. But I think definitely for healthcare, I sort of fell into healthcare, but it wasn't my core competency. I'm not a doctor, and you know. And I worked a lot with doctors. It was very exciting, but it wasn't necessarily as tied to my own self. So when I came back to India, that's when I really thought, like, now I have a blank slate. So what is it that, you know, I want to plant the seed for?
So now when you have a blank slate or tabula rasa, how does education come into that?
Yeah, I think for me, before education came the gender.
Okay.
You know, growing up as a girl in Delhi, and also having worked in a lot of places. See, जब आप बड़े हो रहे होते हैं और लोग बोलते हैं ना, अरे लड़कियां ये नहीं कर सकती, या ऐसे मत करो, या वैसे मत करो, या don't do this. It used to irritate me, but everybody said, बेटा ऐसा ही होता है. And you accept it because you think ऐसा ही होता है, सब कहते हैं ऐसा ही होता है, right? You don't challenge it as much. But it's only when I had moved away and then lived in South America and lived in Africa, and even in those places, itna nahi hota hai. You know, I realized that this is not normal, and this is not what, you know, we have to fight against this, because there are shades of you know, gender inequities across the world.
Right.
However, they're not as acute as we see them here.
Really?
Really, honestly speaking. Especially, most of my perspective is working in the villages. You know, India has highest number of out-of-school girls anywhere in the world. Highest number of child brides anywhere on the planet. Highest number of women and girls in, you know, trafficked and other things. It is, and even like what we were talking about, putting the names and those kind of symbols, that level I have not seen, especially not in South America, and definitely, you know, not like in Ecuador or Mexico or other places.
But one would imagine that you would see such things in Africa, because that is the kind of image we have of
Yeah.
these societies.
Yeah, Africa definitely, and Africa
Yeah.
has a different shade to the problems,
Right.
because you have a lot more of the teenage pregnancy, a lot of AIDS and HIV, and with different kind of vulnerabilities. So definitely Africa, but I'm saying not in South America. I didn't see that level in South America.
So when you came here, when you decided that gender issues were what you had to work on,
Yeah.
why did you choose education and not something else?
Because in my own journey as well, education played the biggest pivotal role.
For you, it was very empowering to
It
be
was
educated.
very empowering.
Yeah.
It opened doors that otherwise would not have opened to me, you know. And because education was my pathway to being able to go and work anywhere and to be able to do anything, you know, education is really the one of the most powerful ways towards empowerment and opportunity. And so for girls, I mean, the battles are so many.
Yeah.
Battles
Yeah.
are humongous. But I felt like education was the tool to try and solve for them.
And why did you choose Rajasthan of all places?
Yeah. I actually didn't know anything. So I realized, I said, मुझे कुछ नहीं आता है, तब मैं पूछ के सबसे और देख के और research करके. So first and foremost, I landed up in Delhi and I went to MHRD. And I said, देखिए मैं बालिका शिक्षा पे काम करना चाहती हूँ, तो इंडिया तो बहुत बड़ा है, मैं where should I go? So they said, madam, एक मिनट रुकिए. They went inside and they gave me this parchi, and it had a list of districts. So that time there was 647 districts in the country, and they said these 26 are the most critical gender gap districts in education. So I said, very good. I looked at the list. 9 of the districts out of the 26 were in Rajasthan.
Okay.
So I said, "Ab ji, wahan introduction karwa dijiye." And then eventually went to the Rajasthan government and I said, this is what it looks like, you know. So I don't know anything, मुझे आता नहीं है काम, लेकिन आपके जो सबसे कठिन गांव हैं 50, जहाँ पे you're having the hardest time, you give me those 50 villages and I will try. So that's how it kind of started. So they gave me 50 villages in 2 of their toughest districts. And then I went to lots of NGOs and I said, आप थोड़ा काम सिखा दीजिए, community mobilization कैसे होगा, ground level पे क्या करना चाहिए. And then learned from the best practices in the sector.
So basically, you just had a vague idea and a prayer maybe,
Yeah.
and you were not really equipped to do the kind of stuff you
No.
wanted to do.
But we had a learning attitude and
Yeah.
started with that. And then the 50 schools did well. So the government gave me 500 schools. They said, "Aap ye pura area le lijiye." Then from the 500 schools, they gave me one whole district. And then that became my unit of replication. So now, karte karte, now it's 10 years, and we are this year in 14 districts, 12,000 villages, with a team of 11,500 community workers and 1,500 full-time staff. This year alone, we're working with close to 2 million children, boys and girls, across these geographies. But in the last 10 years, we have brought back 200,000 out-of-school girls, girls who had dropped out, or girls who had never been enrolled in school. So finding them and then bringing them back and connecting them to school.
And these were very hard times, weren't they? If you walk into a village and
Yeah.
you say, "Ladkiyan school mein aao," you must have faced a lot of opposition.
Yeah. Definitely. You know, so many things. Like I remember the first when we started to do village meetings, and you know, I'd be like, महिलाएं थोड़ा आगे आके बैठें. Then I'd encourage the women to speak. लेकिन अगर कोई औरत बोलेगी तो वो all the men would just get up and leave. कि इन
अच्छा.
औरतों की हिम्मत कैसे हुई हमारे सामने बोलने की.
Okay.
And slowly, like, it's gotten a lot better now. It's not like that. But 10 years ago, it was shocking for me that, you know, women were like in the veil down till here, but then also then the men sort of felt so insulted if they spoke in their presence. We would go door to door. So our basic work starts from going door to door to find every girl that's out of school.
Right.
उसमें भी लोग बोलते थे ये पागल कुत्ते फिर वापस आ गए, and people would slam doors in our faces. So that was a very difficult time.
So what kept you going?
I think you
क्योंकि
know,
हम
how
लोग
can you not?
ज़्यादातर छोटी सी बात हो तो हम बोलते हैं छोड़ो ये इसमें क्यों पढ़ना.
Yeah.
You're going to Rajasthan, बला की गर्मी है, ऊपर से दुनिया भर की गाली गलौज हो रही है, and what kept you going?
I think what was really inspiring for me was the problems were there. बट कितने लोग साथ में जुड़ते गए, you know, इतने लोग साथ में जुड़ते गए थे. I just told you, वो 11,500 जो community workers हैं, हम उनको टीम बालिका बुलाते हैं. There are champions on the ground for girls' education. All 11,500 are unpaid volunteers. Unpaid. कोई पैसा नहीं लेता. सब मतलब बालिका शिक्षा के लिए आपके साथ जुड़ रहे हैं because they want to bring about a change in their villages. How inspiring is that, right?
Very
so how can you
inspiring.
back away? Because and as जैसे जैसे लोग जुड़ते गए, we kind of felt like this is what's needed. So we have to keep pushing and we have to keep going.
So do you remember your first breakthrough? वो कैसा था?
My first breakthrough.
हाँ.
So, you know, in the early days, my big, and I knew this like deep inside, but we had no evidence. So everybody used to say कि आपके लिए कोई काम नहीं करेगा अगर आप पैसे नहीं देते हो. हमारे पास पैसे कभी इतने होते ही नहीं थे. Right? इतने दूर दराज गांव में हम लोग काम करते हैं कि कौन कोई आता नहीं है, देखता नहीं है. So it was very hard to fundraise. So I said, you know, if we keep paying, then this will never grow to the level that we needed to grow because the problem is very, very huge. So we did an experiment. I got a little pool. I won some award from the World Bank. उसमें थोड़ा पैसा आया. तो इसे एक जगह पे हमने 1500 रुपए दिए काम करने के लिए. लड़कियों को ढूंढना, उनका enrollment करवाना, teaching करना ये वो. In one area we paid 500 rupees. And in another area we said we'll spend the money but we will make the trainings really fun. We will give them a t-shirt, non-financial incentives. We'll brand the whole thing. And then we will measure results. And you won't believe it. Where we had the unpaid volunteers is where we had the highest results.
No, that's
They were
amazing.
the youngest people, but we had the most impact. And we realized you have to do, this has to be a mission-driven thing. And I think this was my biggest breakthrough. Because if I hadn't done this thing and shown this evidence to other people, saying it can work this way, we wouldn't be at 11,000 people today.
You know, this is very interesting because it was mission-driven and also fun.
Yeah.
With your branded whatever products and all. This also is a big issue about education in India.
Yeah.
That it's so rote driven that nobody likes going to school, or at least most people don't like to go to school, and even if they do, they don't learn much. So did you try to do something also, experiment with how education is imparted? Was that also part of your deal?
Absolutely, and you're so right, because I mean, getting girls into school is just the first step.
Right.
Actually, the most chota step, even though it takes a lot of effort and time. But really, if they're not going to stay in school and learn, then everything is worthless. Right? So we actually went to a couple of organizations, including UNICEF, and we were like, teach us your activity-based learning. So now we've actually built a whole content and curriculum which is completely about engaging the child through activities and really sort of teaching them and boosting their learning levels. And that has shown such strong results because kids are engaged, so their attendance improves. The more the attendance is, you know, the faster and better they learn. So we're seeing exceptional results in English and math and Hindi in terms of learning levels.
Normally, that's another thing that people say, that लड़कियों को math नहीं आती है. Is that true?
You know, it's yes. People say a lot of things.
Yeah.
लेकिन हमने जो देखा है in terms of our data, girls are always a few percentage points behind boys when we do our baselining. But it's by the time they go through the content, we find that they catch up a lot faster.
Okay.
A lot faster. And that's just because, you know, they end up missing school more because घर में काम होता है. I have seen families come to schools and saying वो रेखा को घर भेज दो. क्यों? Guest आए हैं, चाय कौन बनाएगा?
Oh.
Yeah, so girls get pulled out
Yeah.
so much for the smallest of things. आज उसकी तबीयत खराब है घर में किसी की, तो आप, you know, कन्या को घर भेज दो and things. So it's very hard for them. But when you bring some good quality activity-based learning and resources their way, they run like nobody's business.
See, the other thing that must be a hindrance is, of course, when you talk about girls, there are the periods when they have to be home because that can't be dealt in the kind of schools we have in rural areas, and toilets, which is a big issue. So did you face those as well?
Absolutely. So when I first started working, my first district, you know, we were shocked because only 40% of the schools had a functioning separate girls' toilet. Now the number is much, much higher. But then, even when the numbers were rising on paper, see, the gender lens is missing.
Right.
If you don't have female teachers, if it's all male teachers and all, कोई सोच ही नहीं रहा है लड़की को चाहिए क्या. So we would see things like, right, there's a school, there's the main road, right next to the main road the girls' toilet block has been built and it has no doors or roof.
So how can a girl go?
Yes, exactly. But किसी ने सोचा ही नहीं, किसी के, you know, which is why equity and you know, having female teachers and all that is so important, because you need that perspective as to what is it that the girls need to make the girls
So really,
girl-friendly.
when you are taking a girl to school, this is all about societal development as a whole. It isn't just that one girl who goes to school.
Yeah. It is. It's for actually for any kind of gender work. The key pieces are, you need obviously to build the girl, right? So her aspirations, as we talked about, her own self-esteem and confidence and leadership and all of that. But वो आप अकेले नहीं कर सकते. You have to do it with norm shift. यानी कि if the community wants to keep control of the girl,
Right.
and you get the girl for all empowerment, you're going to have a major clash. You'll actually put her in a more difficult situation. So that mindset change for the community is key to doing any kind of work.
So when you do this sort of a mindset thing, you know, one approach, of course, is to target the women. You talk to the elder women, to the grandmothers and mothers and all. But the other also is to talk to the men, because they then tend to be the catalysts in this entire process. What has worked for you?
You know, what has worked is to move away from thinking of a single strategy solution,
Okay.
because it's never going to be a single strategy solution. So you'll actually have to end up talking to the mother. Then the mother will say, मैं तो जी ठीक हूँ, लेकिन father नहीं agree हो रहे हैं. फिर father से आप बात कीजिए, father will say, नहीं, मेरी मम्मी को problem है, and she is the head of the house. So you have to end up talking to everybody. But even more than who you're talking to or what you're saying, I mean, I think the key becomes that you and I going is not going to change it, right? It needs a local agent and a local message. So our Team Balika volunteers become key, because they have the trust of the villagers. They themselves are educated. They're role models. तो वो जब बोलते हैं तो उसमें power रहता है. And also finally, I think the important piece becomes of what you're saying if your message is authentic. अब डेटा बोलें कि GDP जाता है, बढ़ जाता है लड़कियों के स्कूल जाने से, ये वो, it makes no difference.
sense at all.
But I have seen volunteers stand there and tell stories saying, मेरी बहन थी, उसको मेरे माँ बाप ने पढ़ा दिया था, फिर उसकी शादी हुई, फिर वो फलाने गांव में गई रहने, फिर उसका हस्बैंड की डेथ हो गई, लेकिन चूंकि वो शिक्षित थी तो अब सिलाई कढ़ाई से अपना घर चला लेती है. And there I see the parents, you know, coming to the table to have a conversation and for that thing to change.
You know, this is really very interesting, and in a way it is the USP of Educate Girls.
You know, we realized that we needed a community agent. So first we had started with something called natural leader. We thought, अगर हम community mobilization करेंगे, somebody from the community will emerge. But वो नहीं हुआ. You know, it took a lot of time, and so eventually we came up with the Team Balika model, and it's basically Team Balika is the team that we're creating for the girl child.
Right.
So
And the Team Balika also has boys.
Yes,
And that is the exciting part.
And that's the exciting part. And the really the ridiculous thing is that earlier we said नहीं हमें सिर्फ ladies चाहिए. तो जब लड़के आते भी थे तो हम कहते थे नहीं आपका काम नहीं है यहाँ पे. And it was like we wanted to slap ourselves a year later, saying how idiotic are we and how much more powerful it is when young boys want to stand with us and fight for girls' education. तो वो थोड़ा realization होने में हमको भी time लगे कि हमारे अपने internal prejudices थे कि हम सोच रहे थे कि it should be only women. But it's amazing. We have 60% of our Team Balikas are young boys जो आज अपने गांव में खड़े होते हैं और बोलते हैं कि हर एक लड़की को स्कूल जाना चाहिए and work towards girls' education.
In these last 10 years, it's been a huge journey with a lot of learning and as you said, slapping yourselves and saying, why didn't we do this before? But what are the major things that you have achieved that you're extremely proud of?
I think things that we feel we've done really well is being able to bring back 200,000 out of school girls back into school in some of the toughest areas of our country. The second is our work inside the school. So with the learning curriculum, we run it for all the children in 3rd, 4th and 5th grade.
Okay.
So that's impacted about 650,000 children just in terms of improving their quality
Right.
of learning.
You know, you talk about how children, especially girls, you have them in class till 5th, 6th, 7th, 3rd, 4th, 5th. How do you ensure that they continue with their studies? Because 5th standard is not good enough, is it?
Absolutely, absolutely, you're right. And it's just because we were in the first 10 years of our journey in building the model. Our first step was to focus on primary. But we've also always been focusing on the middle school as well in terms of life skills and individual tracking of girls.
Right.
So all the girls in our program, the out of school girls that we track through a door-to-door survey, etc., we actually track them individually. So we make sure that they're not going to drop out after the 5th grade, that they continue in the 6th and the 7th. And now we're actually building a learning content for 6th, 7th and 8th,
Right.
and making sure she's getting enrolled into secondary.
Okay.
So that's actually, that pilot is happening now, and that's what will grow out and scale over the next 5 years.
You know, in India, the government talks about Skill India as acquiring skills for any kind of profession. Is that also part of your curriculum? Are you also trying to teach them to be self-sufficient in that sense?
So because our children are younger, so we don't necessarily have a vocational training, but our life skills are very much about the softer skills that you need, whether it's leadership or confidence, to be able to go out and be able to, have a voice.
You're a Delhi girl, so you know that being alone on Delhi streets is not safe for any girl, no matter how educated she is. And that is again where you have to change mindsets. If things happen like this in Delhi, much worse would happen in villages. So how do you address that sort of an issue?
And that's such an important point. So actually, and as the girls get older, these factors come into play much more, right? Much more. So as part of that middle school and the secondary pilot that we're doing now, one of the key pieces are two things. One is creating safe spaces for girls. Right. So even within, apart from doing learning and apart from doing the enrollment and things, at a panchayat level or at a school level, we're creating safe spaces where girls can come and be able to talk about their problems. It could be menstrual problems, it could be safety problems, but that, so we're calling that my space, but this is only for the girls to be able to come and resolve the issues that they may be facing.
And also many girls face abuse at home, sexual abuse from their relatives and friends and all that also needs to be addressed.
So definitely, so these are all the pieces that they should be able to address in that my space. The second piece is that we're actually now training the older boys to become much stronger advocates for the adolescent girls.
Okay.
Right? Because one of the things is what you talked about. The other thing is while walking to school, लड़के छेड़ते हैं, सीटी बजाते हैं. But what is parents' reaction? बोलते हैं school छोड़ के घर पे बैठो.
Right.
Right? So really creating a whole sort of like 3 or 4 boys from each village and training them to saying you're going to be the interrupters from the boy side of it for this kind of behavior. And then you're going to be responsible for making sure that the route that the girls are taking to school is safe. That, all of those elements can be tackled. So creating both of those, one again, like in the community, an enabling environment for the girls to be able to, and the second is a safe space where they can come and actually express if they're having an issue.
The other disruptive thing to do would be probably to tell boys it's not cool to whistle or heckle girls. Do you think that anyone's working on that?
Exactly. So that's what we were trying to do with the creating these boys, these youth leaders, the boys, to be able to go and have those conversations with other boys.
कि अगर तुम मर्द हो तो लड़कियों को नहीं,
तो तुमको ये करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. तुम चाय की दुकान के सामने खड़े होके सारा टाइम सीटी बजाओगे, that has to just be interrupted. Or, boys even have to interrupt conversations which are deeply sexist, which are abusive in nature, even those to saying, this is not right, this is not a joke. And really building that kind of sensitivity is key. Because it leads to dangerous behavior.
It leads to danger.
And it leads to an acceptability of that behavior.
So we've seen that in big cities when migrants come in, they don't seem to have a rootedness or a sense of belonging to the city. So the behavior tends to be different. But you're talking about boys and young men who belong to those villages or to those districts. When they behave in a particular manner, it is kind of reflecting on the families or, this is where they belong, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, I think, their, patriarchy affects boys and men equally. They're equal victims of it, right? There are sort of a set format for masculinity,
Right.
that they're also sort
Caught
of
up in
exhibiting.
that, yeah.
They're caught up in that, right?
Yeah.
So one is really through this sort of breaking that cycle, saying you really don't need, this is not about being a man.
Yeah.
Like being a man can be just such a higher level job
Yeah.
than what you're kind of, kind of stuck in. And I think that, but the second piece is I think a lot of the boys don't, I'm talking about in villages, like ye siti baja diya, ye wo, they don't think that this is really harming someone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
तो मस्करी की मजाक किया. It's when you actually sit them down and say, when you do that, A, how unsafe she's feeling, but also the repercussions are all on her.
Yeah.
तुमने इनवाइट किया होगा, तुम देख के उनको हंसती हो, तुम ये करती हो, वो करती हो, and the solution is always स्कूल छोड़ो, घर पे बैठो और शादी हो जाती है. So they don't make all of those kind of connections many times, the young boys. So really it's about helping them seeing that this is not the masculinity you want to exhibit, and secondly to think about the repercussions it's really having on the girl.
I think this question, of course, is relevant to you personally. But what happens is the kind of role models we have in the media are usually either aggressive, or if you see cinema, then they are the ones who do all this siti marna and that kind of thing. Now you're married to a filmmaker, Hansal Mehta. So do you think that is a way of turning things around, where chivalry means different things? मर्दानगी का मतलब है कि आप लड़की को protect करो, उसकी किताबें उसको ऐसे धक्का मत मारो, ये सब चीज़ें ना हो. Do you ever have that kind of a conversation with Hansal?
Actually, Hansal is, I think, a bigger feminist than I am. Really, he's also a much more vocal feminist than I am. And if you look at all of his work, they're always incredibly strong female characters.
Absolutely.
I can't think of any place where he has sort of tried to objectify women, or that his mothers haven't been really strong, or the wives have also always been really strong.
That is true.
And that is just innate to him. He comes from, his mother was an incredibly strong and amazing woman. she had such an influence on all of us, but particularly him. So I think he is a much bigger feminist. I would not even want to have
he would be the perfect,
he'd be the one to tell me on what I should and should not be doing in terms of a gender equity lens.
He also offered to cook for you.
He always cooks. He is the cook in our house.
Okay.
I don't think anybody in my house wants me to cook. But my children, if he's traveling, they just look completely shocked. They're like, what are we going to do about food? He's an amazing cook. So he holds the fort in the kitchen as well.
I think we should make a film about that, so that people learn that the gender roles that have been prescribed to the two genders don't really work. And they're not really valid, are they?
Our kids always come back and they'll say, and since so-and-so brought this to the class to eat. And, Mama, it's in those homes where mummies cook. Like they'll always make a little point to let me know that other people have mummies who cook, because they've only seen their father.
And you have 2 daughters.
Yes. Yeah.
So are they also learning what it is? Well, they're too young and too protected to really understand what happens in the world.
And I think they're fairly aware, because I take them to the field with me a lot. And even this encounter with Naraz Nath, they were in the village with me, and so they understand it. They were as shocked. They've been to Sirohi is one of the districts we work. I've taken them into the classrooms, and the headmaster said, "Jin ladkiyon ki shaadi hogi, wo haath upar kare." This is class 1.
Class 1?
In class 1, and about 5 to 7 girls raised their hands, and my daughters have seen this, like with their own eyes. That
class 1 would be hardly 5 or 6.
6 years old. So you see, so marriage happens, and then the gona happens when they hit puberty. But child marriage is a huge impediment to girls' education. The data I read, it was in the papers a few years ago, that said for Rajasthan, 68% of the girls are child brides, 15% below the age of 10.
And this is despite all the laws and everything.
So, the execution of that law is missing. The law is there, but how it's being shown. But, and also to them, so A, they're aware, but second is, I think they hold me accountable now. We were driving once past Rajasthan, and they saw this one girl emerge with a bundle of firewood on her head, उसके पीछे पेज उसकी थोड़ी छोटी बहन, फिर एकदम छोटी बहन, और फिर एकदम ही छोटा 3-4 साल का बच्चा थोड़ा से leaves वगैरह उठा के सब एक कतार में चल रहे थे. And they said to me, and they looked at me accusingly, and they said, "Why isn't educated girls here? Why aren't you helping?" So they seem to think that we should be doing a lot more.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is wonderful.
So chances are they'll follow in your footsteps.
No, so we just came up with our next 5-year plan, and they said, "Can you please present it to us? We want to know how much more you're going to do."
Oh, fantastic.
So I had to present my entire strategy to them and get their approval.
And how old are your daughters?
11 and 8.
A perfect age. Because they can really relate to kids that age, isn't it?
Yeah.
When both of you travel, normally what happens is when there's a filmmaker or anyone creative in the family, they need a lot of space and a lot of space for their mood swings. And here you are, creative in a different way, but you both need to be away from the home for such a long period of time. Who then handles the house for you?
Oh my God! It always, it takes a village to bring up your children, doesn't it? So we always try and tag team. So one of us is always there at home. But there are periods once or twice a year or 3 or 4 times a year when that is just not possible. And so either we have the kids go to my father, or my father comes and stays, or his sisters will come and stay, or his father. So somebody or the other in the family is always kind of chipping in to support us.
The CEO of one of the multinationals said that her mother told her, when you might be the CEO of a multinational, but when you come home, you're just a wife. So you can just remove that cap and ghar aake ghar ka kaam karo. So for somebody to say that is usually very shocking, that even when she's working, one ear is to the house and to the children, how they're growing up, unka homework hua ki nahi. She has to put checks and balances in place for that. But for you, fortunately, that's not the way things move.
Yeah. I think to some extent, you could be going to go and do a pitch for fundraising, and I'll be closing the door and thinking, "Bachcho ke lunch ke liye dahi tha kya fridge mein?" That is some of it that you're always doing as a mother. I don't think.
Yeah, but not out of a sense of guilt.
But not out of a sense of guilt. And I also know that if I didn't think about it, it would be okay. And Hansal's probably also thinking about it. आज मैं सोच रहा हूँ mixed दाल बनाऊँ बच्चों के लिए कि धानचक बनाऊँ. He's like having this other kind of a thought in his mind as to what he wants to feed the kids, and he's planning the menu in the evening, and so it's an equal.
Isn't it wonderful how both your father and now your husband have kind of brought you where you are, in a sense? They've kind of, by letting you go where you want to go with the flow, they've allowed you to be, and this is where you are.
And I think, but that's what partnership and family and support systems. I feel like, yes, I know that this is unusual in a lot of different ways, but I think we all need that, right?
We all need that.
We all need that. And we all need to be that support for somebody else equally. But yes, I feel very fortunate.
But for a young girl who ran away to the ashram, what was that phase like?
It was incredible, actually. To be able to be that age and to be able to stay on the banks of the Ganga in an ashram, and you start the day and you do yoga and meditation. फिर आप सब लोग बैठ के नाश्ता बनाते हैं, खाते हैं. Then you go to Parmarth ashram for a lecture, and then you go to another ashram for another lecture on spirituality, and you come back and you have lunch, and शाम को आप फिर थोड़ा आपका भजन कीर्तन होता है, या you read the scriptures. It was incredible, and I felt like it was possibly the best part of my educational journey. Really, truly, it was. My Devi also taught me about classical music, and she introduced me to Tagore's poetry, and we would go and do a lot of the social work around as well. So it was just the most calming, most beautiful time in my life.
So do you carry any of that with you now?
It's almost like that's the memories of the ashram, and always kind of centers you. So whenever you're in deep stress and things, my mind will always kind of bring me back to that time to bring a sense of calm and to sort of focus and center.
So do you practice any yoga?
Yes, I do.
You mentioned that your Devi also taught you appreciation of classical music. So do you kind of go back to that in some way?
Not so much. I think, Hansal is very much into music, so our house is always full of music, things. But I've never really been able to distinguish one rag from the other. So I leave all the artistic bits to him. But he and I definitely like to watch a lot of cinema and, good cinema and go to festivals and.
That's good fun.
Yeah.
Yes, especially international cinema, if you get a chance to see all that.
Yeah.
But what is the kind of music that reverberates in your house? So if we want to, bring a finale to the program, what is the kind of song that you would like to listen to?
So nowadays, the only thing that's running in my house is this new box that's come out, the Caravan, which has all the old Hindi songs.
Yeah.
And so even my daughters are requesting Manna Day. And so it's just like beautiful old film songs that are playing in our house all the time.
I want to know where you are headed now. What is it that you would like to now do next?
So I think in terms of what I would like to see happen is in the last 10 years, we were able to reach around 4 million children altogether. And the problem is so much bigger than that. So in the next 5 years, I want to be able to go into 31 districts.
Okay.
Again, so UP, Bihar, I want to be able to move into those states beyond Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. And reach at least 15, 16 million children. And like you said, you kind of reminded, it's like, just the 5th grade is not enough, just the 8th grade is not enough. To really be able to take my work deeper so that we see all of our girls, we see Naraz Nath and we see Antim Bala and we see Achuki and we see all of them completing secondary school, because that's when the big gains really start to kick in for girls.
Well, I hope that happens soon for all the girls in India who are still out of school. I do hope that you reach them soon. And thanks so much for being on our program.
Thank you so much.